welcome to my tutorial for making Merida's teal greeny blue dress. Just to explain, in this video you will see us cutting this dress on the bias, which basically means, as you'll see later on, that we cut diagonally across the fabric instead of the straight grain. So say instead of normal where you would place your fabric, if this was the width, you would place it facing that way. We have actually turned our pieces that way. I recommend only attempting to cut on the bias if you have quite a bit of experience with fabric cutting and sewing, because you're cutting diagonally across the grain. It will create all kinds of other problems and can create quite a bit of havoc, and you have to take extra care with how you handle a bias cut dress. But for those of you who are not that confident, I recommend cutting on the straight, as you probably normally would with a lot of dresses or outfits. Okay, this is my tutorial for making the Merida teal green dress, or dark teal. I'm just wondering how many people out there have actually looked at this and thought, what colour is it? Well, it's a tricky one, because in certain lights it goes bluey green, and in other lights it goes blue, and then sometimes in the sun she's like a dark green. But for most picture shots it appears to be a dark tealy green blue, which was again very hard trying to get the fabric for. And the closest I managed to find, although colours do show up different on photographs and on screen, was this UK company called Online Fabrics, and this is like a crepe fabric, and it was £2.99 a metre, and there's all the information. So it was fairly cheap, and in some lights it goes that dark bluey, and in other lights it goes slightly greeny blue, but it's not two-tone. And I know crepe isn't a traditional fabric from the 12th or 13th century, but it has a nice hang to it, and I think it'll look quite nice. So, but what we're going to tackle is trying to do it on the bias. So I'll have a bias cut dress for this one.
Okay, this is the start of Merida's teal coloured dress. We're going to have a go at cutting this on the bias. We've never actually done one before, and the only instruction we have is from off the internet. So if we're not doing it right, or if you've got any suggestions, feel free to let us know. But this is how we're going to put ours together. First of all, you lay out your strip of fabric, and then we're going to create a 45-degree angle by pulling the top of the fabric down and keeping it even across the bottom edge. And that's going to be wide enough to do our centre front, which will be placed on the fold and cut out. Next, I'm going to show you how to find a 45-degree angle on your pattern pieces, because that is how you have to lay it onto your fabric. I'm fortunate enough to have a checked tablecloth, which makes it very easy for this purpose. You could always get a cutting board as well to get your line straight. What I've done is I've marked where the centre line of the pattern is, all the way down, and then you're going to turn your pattern piece at 45 degrees, and where you've made, don't know whether you can see, but where you've made that line, you've now got to line that up exactly at 45 degrees, and I can see mine through the tablecloth, so I reckon it's about there. Then crease your pattern, where you see this line coming down here on your pattern piece, continue that line onto your new angle. I've just gone over the line a little better so you can see the original line of the dress piece, and I've now continued this line down the main section. What you do now is open up your pattern piece, and you will see where you've put the crease into the paper along there. I've just gone down that now with a dark pen so that you can see that will be the line of the grain on the fabric when you come to put your pattern piece on it. So you have a perfect 45-degree angle. Using our new line of 45 degrees across the fabric, lay out, this is the side front, and cut that out. With bias cut pieces, you have to cut out your pattern pieces one at a time. You can't fold the fabric in half and then cut two. So with the second section of the front side piece, I've turned the pattern upside down, and now I'm going to reverse the grain by cutting it in the opposite direction from the first one. A good tip for finding out whether you have your pattern piece at 45 degrees is I've roughly put the pattern on where I think it should be, and then I've put in a line of pins down my line, and I've just put a few pins here and there at the top. What I'm going to do now is fold the fabric along the top. You know that's a perfect edge, so the two sections should line up perfectly. And what I'm going to do then is crease where the pattern is, so that when I open it back out again, the crease that I've just made is not along the line. So now I know I've got to slightly move the pattern and do it again just to check that you've got your 45-degree angle correct.
I've just very quickly spread my dress out on the floor to give you folks an idea of just how much there is in my dress, because I added 4 inches on the side of every single seam, which will give you about 3/4 of a circle at least, and it's not even full spread because I've run out of room. But there we go, that's how much is in my skirt. Okay, as on my other videos, you'll see us clipping the curves on our dresses, especially if, like here, when we have quite a severe curve or shaping, it's very important to clip so it allows a bit more movement in your seams.
Next I'm going to cut out the lining pieces. I can't just put facings on these because I want it to look a bit nicer than that, so I'm going to go for a lining, and because the original fabric is very thin, I've decided to use the same fabric for the lining as well. So using every pattern piece, I'm going to cut out another piece of material, but this time I'm only going to go down about as far as the waist. All the lining pieces are being put together now with pins, and it's just going to be below waist level when it's finished. So we're just going to tack and sew that together now. Yeah, I forgot to say, the only thing that you don't put together are the shoulder pieces. So on the main dress and on the lining, we're going to leave the shoulders open.
This is the lining piece sewn up apart from the shoulders as previously explained. And I'll show you what to do next. Okay, here we are attaching our lining, which you can just see here. We have the main dress underneath. First of all, you have to pin the lining to the dress, right side to right side. So if you've done it right, you should have the inside of your lining facing up. As you can see, there's the inside, and the dress on the back should have the seams facing out towards the table, as you can see. So first of all, we did have to do a few adjustments, as you'll probably find yourself after pinning it on. And once we've managed to line up with the dress more or less in place, we've then tacked it all the way along. And we've done another trial fit, which we're quite happy with. It seems to fit okay. Once you've done that, I'm going to be sewing on the machine, but what I'm going to do is sew from the edge to the top here, then I'm going to stop, do a backwards forwards on the machine, then take it out, and then going to restart here. So I won't be sewing on the machine across the top here or here, and again not across the top here and not across the top there. So this, when I come to the top of every shoulder seam, I'm going to stop, take it out the machine, restart sewing here, sew, stop, take it out machine, put it back, start sewing here. But I'm going to leave the tacking in there just to hold it at each point. Okay, hope you've understood that. Thank you.
Right, for the neckline, we've worked out the halfway point, and we're going to take the V down to about 2.5 inches, which is 6 centimetres. And you come along the front, and then you go down into a point, come back up again, and then back around the neck. So I'm going to now cut that down the middle, being careful not to cut the sewing line. And then I'm just going to clip the corners. Right, we're just going to give it a final try now before we actually clip any of the curves to make sure that it's a proper fit. Okay, we've now cut the curves on the inside, and we've cut the corners and turned the lining to the inside. And what I usually do is I put a row of tacking around all the edges, because I need to iron it flat, and that's better to do it that way than having pins in all over the place. The next thing we're going to do is put the shoulder seams together. Okay, with right side to right side, we're now going to sew a seam along the shoulders. Just do a normal seam on those and do both of the shoulders. Okay, we've now sewn the shoulder seam, and what I want to do now is to open the seam at the back, lay it flat. Then the next thing will be to put it onto the machine and sew a neat sewing line all the way around the armholes and all the way around the neck edge, and you'll be doing this to both shoulders.
Okay, we've also ran an extra stitching line here where my finger is, both sides. So I'm going to be putting eyelets in the middle here, and that's just to help strengthen the seam a bit.
Okay, the next stage will be to do up the back seam, and I've already put pins in at the top so I know where it's got to be turned under, and from where I want to start putting the lacing, which is just below the waist, from there downwards, that can all be sewn up now to create the back seam.
Okay, we're now doing a fill-in piece in the back of the dress, which is exactly the same principle as what I did on my Merida blue dress. We cut out 2 interfacing strips and then a fill-in piece. To save explaining this all over again, if you'll see my other video, if you'll see my other videos for the blue dress, we explain on there how we did the fill-in piece. So it will just save us doing all that all over again.
Using 3mm eyelets, we have now put those into the back opening.
Okay, I'm now going to be making the armlets or gauntlets, whatever you call them. Now, Disney have drawn it that the connectors are actually not tied, they're actually attached from there to there, and a lot of people seem to make it this way, such as this dress here. But in fact, if anybody's ever seen Ever After, a Cinderella Story with Drew Barrymore, there's an excellent dress that she wears a lot throughout the film that shows you how they would have looked back in that century. And they would not have been attached, they would have been tied, as you can see. This is a traditional way that they would have been attached, and that is how I'm going to do mine, because I like to keep true to the character, but I also like to do it historically and accurate. They also would have been laced up, like this one is only laced here and then there's a gap. Some of them might have been laced up all the way underneath. So I'm going to show you how to make them the proper way and not how Disney have drawn the cartoon. These are the pattern pieces I've come up with. This one for the top of the arm, this one for the lower by the wrist. And first of all, I actually made up a sleeve pattern that came with the dress pattern that I used to make the main dress, and I basically put it on, and Mum drew around me where they need to be cut and measured how long they'd have to be on my arms, so it might be helpful if you have somebody to do this for you. Now, depending how stiff you want your armbands to be, you could just do an outer and a lining, but because this is a crepe fabric and a bit flimsy, I want my bands to be a bit stiffer and a bit more substantial. So I'm using like this, it's kind of an upholstery fabric, a little bit stiff. I didn't want to use interfacing because it will crinkle and show through the fabric. So I've got my outer, my middle part and a liner for the top part, and the same again for the lower part, and then you need another pair to make your second set of armbands for your other arm. This is the bottom armlet that I'm doing here, and first of all you line up your two pieces of fabric, that's your liner and your outer fabric, but I'm using the same fabric to line it so it matches. So you line those up. Next thing to do is to place that stiff piece of fabric I was showing you earlier, and I'm just going to start pinning it on top of the other layer. I've now pinned and I've run some tacking all the way around, as you can see, and the next thing is to machine it properly and do a sewing line. But I've left a gap here, and you'll see why after, because it's needed for turning it inside out, and you need to be able to reach inside, but we'll show you that after. So that's why it's important to leave a fairly decent gap. I mean, depending how big you have to make yours, mine is about a 10 centimetre gap halfway there. Is to take your tacking out and clip the corners without clipping your sewing line, otherwise you'll have to sew it all over again. Cut on that corner, that one and that one. Next thing you have to do very carefully is to cut this piece of white fabric that I've used on mine without cutting the two layers on the side, because we just realised that we're going to be putting eyelets on the edge to lace it up, and it might be a bit stiff for the eyelets to go through. So then you should just have your two layers of green peeking out, like so. That's why you see why we didn't sew across the bottom bit. Basically turning it all the way inside out.
Then using something blunt like the end of a paintbrush or a biro, put it inside and gently push out the corners. Don't push too hard. And then when you've done that, you're going to be ironing it flat.
Okay, repeat the same process for the upper armband as well. Okay, the next thing we have to do on the curved ones is to clip the corners as we do with anything that has a corner like this. Just make some little cuts so it allows your fabric to bend more easily, especially once we've turned it inside out. And again, clip your corners and then turn it inside out as before.
Can't see a thing.
Okay, now we have to sew up the hole that we used for turning it inside out. Just using a catch stitch. Just to seal the hole. And you do that on all your other pieces as well. That's how your piece should look once you've finished.
I put the eyelets in at approximately 2.5 centimetres, and now all the pieces are laced up, ready to go onto the sleeves. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to put the arm gauntlets on. I'll just move you to the light, there you go. Before you put them on, put your gauntlets around your arm so you know how tight you're going to pull the lacing, and then put a really good knot into the lacing at the bottom. And as you can see, I've now sewn on some cord to the dress itself in 3 places, and sewn some cord onto the top of the gauntlet in 3 places, and these are now going to be connected. Okay, we've now tied off the top cords to where it needs to be. Now do the same with the bottom gauntlets. Try it on first to see where you need to, how tight you need to put your lacing. Lace them up and put the laces at the bottom. And on here I've also got 3 cords, 2 there and another one at the back. Just got the cord inside, there you go. And it's also got 3 cords on the next level up, so I'm just going to tie those off. And this is the bottom gauntlet now with all the cords done up, and this is what it should look like when you've actually put it on. So now when you take the whole dress off, you should be able to take the arm gauntlets off at the same time. You don't undo the cords.
Please visit my website for more written and photo tutorials at www.tracyscostumingworld.weebly.com. And on here I have the photos, the videos, costumes, and please feel free to write a comment on my website. Thank you.